Yeah, we're ready to go, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Deputy Clerk. Right, good evening, everybody, and welcome to this full council meeting of Beverley Town Council. Before we begin the meeting proper, obviously everybody is aware that on Friday we learned of the sad passing of His Royal Highness Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh. And I'm deeply saddened to learn of the death of His Royal Highness, Duke of Edinburgh. And on behalf of the residents of Beverley, I sent heartfelt condolences to Her Majesty the Queen Elizabeth II and members of the royal family. They are all in our prayers and thoughts at this very sad time. And we all share a deep sense of loss as we remember with great affection the Duke of Edinburgh. And the Duke had been the Queen's steadfast consort and dedicated public servant for more than 70 years. In war and peace, he set an unparalleled example of service and inspired millions of young people across the world to achieve their potential through the Duke of Edinburgh Award Scheme. We are all diminished by his loss, and we shall not see his like again. But his remarkable legacy will permeate and has the national consciousness for many years to come. As a mark of respect, the Union flag is currently being flown at half-mast on the Town Council building and will remain to do so until the day after his funeral. And I would now like us all to observe a 1-minute silence in memory of His Royal Highness, Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh. Thank you for that, councillors. Also, on last week, in Beverley, a very local tragedy occurred. A young student who attended Longcroft schools died following a tragic incident. And although this occurred outside of the town council's boundaries, many of the students and staff at the school and many residents of Beverley will know the young boy who tragically died, and his family and friends remain also in our thoughts and prayers at what must be an extremely difficult time, and I pass on condolences on behalf of the whole town council to his family and friends. Okay, on with the meeting proper. So we are being live streamed on YouTube via Zoom. So please bear in mind that when taking part in the meeting. Item 1B, to explain the meeting protocol in terms of using remote technology. Just on this point of how meetings are conducted, I want to remind everybody of standing orders 1 O to T, in which it specifies the rules of debate and that members can only speak once on an agenda item and for no longer than 5 minutes. That is apart from speaking on an amendment, on something which has already, so speaking on an amendment which is an amendment to the motion which you have already spoken on, or in exceptions to move or speak an amendment since you last spoke to make a point of order, to give a personal explanation, or to exercise the right of reply, in which again you are limited to 5 minutes for all of the above points. And decisions made on points of order which are very specific and relate to which point of order which point the standing orders have been broken, and determination of whether the standing orders have been broken is made by myself, and my decision, or the chair of that meeting, if it's different to myself, is final. Okay, so these will be enacted on having previously been not. And C, to conduct a roll call of councillors, officers and members of the public present. Sorry, Councillor Pinder, did you want to speak on that point?
Yes, I just wanted to ask, yeah, you're quite correct. I just wanted to ask, given that we've got an exceedingly long report to review, can I suggest that we may want to just suspend that when we come to discuss the report, because it's going to be rather difficult if...
that would have to be a decision when we come to that report. If you would like to move that standing orders be suspended, that would be a decision for the full council to make.
Thank you.
Okay. So a roll call of councillors present. On my screen, I've got myself, Councillor Pinder, Councillor Gow, Councillor Jack, Councillor Horsley, Councillor Willis, Councillor Hopkins, Councillor Wildey, Councillor Tucker, Councillor Johnson, and Councillor P. Astell. To receive apologies for absence. I have received apologies from Councillor Healy for the time being. He is currently being held up in a planning meeting, of which they are discussing the combined power thing at the leisure centre. So he's tied up for that, but as soon as that item is over with, as soon as that meeting is over with, he will be joining us, he has told me. Anything else, Deputy Town Clerk?
Councillor David Boynton, due to work.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Town Clerk, declarations. A, to record declarations of interest by any member of the council in respect of the agenda items listed below. Members declaring interests should identify the agenda item and type of interest being declared. Non-declared. To note B, to note dispensations given to any member of the council in respect of agenda items listed below. None to note. To confirm and sign the minutes of full council. A, full council held on the 22nd of February 2021. I move these from the chair. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Horsley, thank you. And all those in favour, please show. That's unanimous, thank you. B, extraordinary full council on the 29th of March 2021. Again, I move these from the chair. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Willis. And all those in favour, please show. So that, can you just hold your hands up, please, because we need to write down that. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Thank you. And those against? None. Okay. So 1 abstention. Thank you. And agenda item 5, to confirm and sign the following committee minutes. A, Personnel Committee on the 24th of February 2021. Do I have a proposer for those, please? Councillor Johnson, and a seconder, please. Councillor Jack. And for those present at the meeting, if you can vote for all those in favour, please show. That's a unanimous from those present at the meeting. B, Policy and Finance Committee held on the 1st of March 2021. Proposed by Councillor Johnson. A seconder, please. Councillor Hopkins. And all those in favour, please show. Yeah, so that's carried for those present.
Mr. Mayor, for the record, I voted on the personnel minutes, but I wasn't there. Sorry about that.
Right. Okay. Thank you for the clarification, Councillor Astle. So item C, Planning, Property and Services Committee held on the 9th of March 2021. Proposed by Councillor Astle. A seconder, please, Councillor Tucker. And all those in favour, please show. And that's a majority of those present. Thank you. And D, Personnel Committee held on the 30th of March 2021. Proposer for those, please. Councillor Johnson. And a seconder for those, please. Councillor Astle. And please show if you're in favour, if you was at the meeting, please show. Thank you. That's unanimous for those present. And E, Planning, Property and Services Committee held on the 30th of March 2021. Please show. Sorry, proposed by Councillor Astle. And a seconder, please. Councillor Gow, thank you. And all those in favour, please show. Thank you. That's unanimous for those that were present. Right, moving on to item 6, Mayor's announcements and correspondence. A, the annual parish meeting 2021. Righty. So this is being conducted for the first time virtually in accordance with the current guidelines on this. The Beverley Parish meeting will be held on Wednesday, the 28th of April at 6 p.m. and it's going to be taking place via Zoom, and it will be live streamed also on YouTube. The meeting will be chaired by myself, and it is worth noting that it's not a meeting of the Town Council. It is instead an opportunity for residents who are listed on the electoral register as living within the parish of Beverley to raise issues affecting the town. Now, these might range from concerns regarding planning to celebrating aspects of our community spirit over what's been a really difficult year for everybody. So to speak at the meeting, residents must be on the electoral register and live within the parish of Beverley. The neighbouring parishes of Woodmansey and Molescroft, they hold their own meetings. If you want to speak and raise a question, I'm encouraging residents to contact the Town Council by 12 noon on the 16th of April, Friday the 16th of April, by emailing the clerk, clerk@beverley.gov.uk. Anyone who wishes to speak to refrain from referring to individuals who may not be there to respond, and any councillors there are there as residents in their own right and not in their elected capacity other than me as mayor. Also, we are planning, once all restrictions are eased, to hold another one later on in the year in person for those who can't access the technology. So we're trying to make it as accessible as we can, but that is yet to be planned, and that is to be confirmed as and when restrictions are eased. Deputy Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to add to that, I will send the press release regarding that out to all councillors as well, so they're aware of the process which it details within. Whilst we can't stop anybody who wishes to raise something on the evening raising it, they will be allowed to if they come to via the Zoom room. We're just encouraging people to tell us in advance, so we have an order and a schedule of people, because it might be quite difficult coordinating that remotely. But after the people who have given prior notice, it will then be open to anybody who may be at the meeting who wants to speak then. So we're not cutting anybody out, and we'll just try the best we can, and hopefully technology will be our friend that night.
Thank you, Deputy Clerk. Yeah, so everybody's welcome to come along and to be at the meeting. So please do come along. It's a really good way of engaging with the public. Normally, it's done in person, and it is a good way of engaging with residents, but obviously this time it's slightly different, but still a good opportunity. Moving on to item B, any other correspondence and announcements? I do have a couple of announcements. The mayoral event at the cabaret evening, I am really proud to announce that we've got the total amounts in for how much we raised, and we raised £600 to be split between the charities. So I'm really proud of that, considering it was a very virtual event, and it wasn't physical. We weren't able to do a raffle, a dinner, and all such as that, and the stuff that normally comes with such events. To raise £600 just from asking people to dig deep, especially in this time when people don't have an awful lot of spare cash lying about. It's testament to the people of this town that they rally together and come up trumps every time. So I just want to say thank you to everybody who donated and contributed to the evening. It was really fantastic. And just also, I can't remember if I mentioned it at the last full council meeting. It has been quite a while since then. But the awards evening has been postponed. It was going to be virtual, and but it was felt, and I completely concur, and we decided that if this is the first time we're doing it, we want to do it right. And it needs to be done properly and physically, and so we are postponing it until we can do a physical awards evening. Hopefully it will be later this year, once we're completely free from restrictions and we have our much sought after freedom again. So yeah, we're not doing any virtual awards, unfortunately, but we will be celebrating what's happened and commemorating what's happened in the past year later down the line. So watch out for that one. Right. Moving on. Reports from number 7, reports from councillors serving on external bodies, to receive brief reports, if any, from councillors who represent the town council on external bodies. I do actually have a report to give back. So I'm the representative on the town centre working group, and it's a really quite good group of a mixture of people from right across the town, and it's looking at various different routes, different ideas really, and it is Councillor Healy has now joined us in the meeting. So thank you, welcome Councillor Healy. So the working group is looking at various different elements throughout the town. One of which is well, there's quite a few different things that they're looking at. Councillor Johnson, do you just want to come in there, because I can't quite remember specifically what they're looking at. I know it's quite a bit, but it's lots of things that we're already doing, that we that they can potentially feed into. Do you just want to come in there, Councillor Johnson? Sorry.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. You kind of put me on the spot now as well. They kind of got buy one get one free, didn't they? For the first meeting, because we both turned up, because I thought you could make it and you thought I couldn't make it, and we both turned up at the same time. So they generously allowed us both to stay. I think the point is that what they're looking at is any way in which business can be helped across that spine of Beverley. So they're not kind of touching on all the other stuff that we're doing as a town council on the estates and things like that. It's very much concentrated on the spine of Beverley, and looking for ideas that would help improve footfall, would help improve the visitor experience as well when we get back to opening up. So they've been discussing things like signposting. They're discussing a new app which would show people around Beverley. That kind of thing that perhaps we as a town council wouldn't get involved with, but which they can do. And the important thing is it involves the East Riding as well. East Riding of your council officers.
I think the main thing to think about as well, one of the main takeaways is it's not an actual body, so it can't actually do anything. So it needs our support. So you know, these ideas that they're coming up with need support from different elements of the town, of which we are one of them. So that's why we have a representative on there to feed into. Also, I just remembered one of the massive things that they were talking about, and it did take up quite a lot of the meeting, was Saturday Market and the park pedestrianisation of that, and looking into what that means for business, etc. So it is very good place to discuss ideas and to potentially bring different agencies and bodies together. So it is a good meeting to go to. So thank you, Councillor Johnson. I'm sorry to put you on the spot there. Thank you for coming in.
We got there. Thank you.
Yeah, we did get there. Right. Does anybody else have anything to feed back? No. Excellent. Moving on to the internal audit. Number 8, to receive and consider the internal audit report. So we've all had sight of it. We've all been part of a meeting with the internal auditor. We've all asked questions and we have all received answers to those questions. That being said, would anybody like to speak on this issue? Right, Councillor Tucker.
Just to say, Mr. Mayor, that Councillor Pinder had her hand up earlier on. I think there was something that she wanted to raise.
Thank you, Councillor Tucker. Is this not on the? I thought this was part of the internal audit, Councillor Pinder, was it? Or was it before this?
Do you remember the point I raised earlier as to whether we're limiting people to one comment? Because if there's a discussion, because it's quite a long report, whether council
yes,
to suspend the standing order for this one agenda item, this one longer, because it's such a long report.
So is that a motion that you are saying there, a proposal?
Yes,
you're proposing that, Councillor Pinder. So Councillor Pinder has proposed to suspend standing orders to enable councillors to speak more than once in this current debate. Do I have a seconder for that proposal, please? Councillor Hopkins. And all those in favour, please show. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4 in favour, and those against, please show. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the motion is rejected. Okay. Sorry, let me just get my bits back up on the screen. Right, the internal audit report then. Councillor Healy.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'd like to move that this council acknowledges the findings of the internal audit. That Beverley Town Council generally has a good system of governance, risk management and control in place. Some issues, non-compliance or scope for improvement were identified, as a consequence of which our staff, under the direction of the acting clerk, have put together a comprehensive action plan which addresses each of the recommendations made and will be reviewed again for compliance later in the year. I move.
Right. Do I have a seconder for that, please? Councillor Tucker. Thank you. Right. Councillor Gown.
Just a point, Mr. Mayor, you said that we were all present at that meeting. Unfortunately, I recorded my absence on Monday, I believe.
Okay, I will rephrase what I said, Councillor Gow. Thank you very much for the correction. Some members were present at the meeting with the auditor, but all members had the opportunity to submit pre-questions and also receive the answers in advance of the meeting. Thank you for that. Councillor Pinder.
Yes, thank you. I would like to speak to an amendment to that, which is that the council notes with, whilst recognising the splendid efforts of the deputy clerk and the other officers, the council notes with concern the failings in the report, which include risk management, lack of internal controls, that little progress has been made since the independent audit last year, and that although there is the suggestions put forward by the internal auditor and by our own officers are extremely welcome, there are still significant areas of concern that need addressing. Thank you.
Do I have a seconder for that amendment, please? Councillor Hopkins. Thank you. Right. Would anybody like to speak on the amendment? No. So I now move to the vote for the amendment. All those in favour of the amendment, please show. That is 4 in favour, and those against, please show. Hold your hands up there, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 against. So the amendment is rejected and the motion is as was. Would anybody like to speak on the original motion? No. So I move to the vote for the motion, which is proposed by Councillor Healy, seconded by Councillor Tucker. All those in favour of the motion, please show. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in favour, and those against, please show. 3 against. Thank you. Okay, so item B, to receive and consider suggested resolutions and timescales relating to recommendations detailed in the internal auditor report. You've all got those in your packs. It is very precise. Yeah, thank you. Deputy Town Clerk.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. First, apologies. When you're working on a screen, you don't realise how small some things print up. If you've seen this on a screen, you'll be able to zoom in. If you printed it up, you might have to go old school like I have with a magnifying glass to read what I've implemented in here. My suggestion is that the next meeting of policy is next Monday. That meeting starts to look at this in more detail. If this full council approves the document, the recommendations resolutions document, policy and finance can then start breaking it down to direct the work with officers, which can then be reported back through policy and finance minutes to full council. So we have a proactive way forwards and breaking down the work into achievable timescales as recommended, officers recommended. But of course, we need to be flexible in case something may take far less time. Some things may take a little bit more time, but it's to stick as much as we can to the schedule there. So that's the proposal from officers, that we will go forward on a practical basis with that.
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Clerk. I think it's a really good plan for us to correct some of the recommendations made in the interim audit. I think it's really well put together in terms of the timescales, quite clearly who is responsible, which officer is responsible for looking at it, which committee is responsible for looking at it, and the timescales, and the fact it's broken down into quarters. It makes it really manageable, I think, for our time, means that we're not rushing through things, and we can take a little bit of time with it. I agree with yourself, Deputy Clerk. I think it does need to go to the policy committee to work through, but I would think that I think personally that it's appropriate for us to adopt this plan tonight, and for it to go onto the agenda of policy and finance to work through. I think that it's a really good plan. So I'm proposing that from the chair. Do I have a seconder to that, please? Councillor Horsley, thank you. Right, I've got Councillor Hopkins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's really just a query about one point. So on point 14, about service level agreements, it says that we'll look at reviewing services, and obviously for CCTV, that's properly under the auspices of PPS, but I just wasn't sure whether, if we're looking at all other contracts, those might not come under PPS, and that one just might need to be amended to include policy and finance as appropriate, depending on the contract.
Deputy Clerk.
Yeah, if I could, Mr. Chair. Yeah, Councillor Hopkins, right. As we go through, there will be various different ones. The initial one that was raised as an example is the CCTV. But as we go through it and extrapolate the different service of agreements, different things we're looking at, it will be to the appropriate committee. So yeah, we can add that to it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pinder.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to record a thanks to the new internal order. I think she's done an absolutely splendid job. And I'm pleased to note that she's been both willing to take written questions and speak to council.
Thank you. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to echo what Councillor Pinder has just said with regard to our new internal auditor. And I would just like to echo that audit, of course, is a process of continued improvement. And this council has been improving and has been adopting and learning from some of the recommendations that have been made by previous auditors. And the will is very much to ensure that we continue this process of improvement and compliance. And of course, the JPAG for this year, it will be different to the JPAG for last year, so that our AGAR for this year already has new pointers on it to improve different areas of council business compared to last year. So even if we were fully compliant, for example, with this year's AGAR, that might not be the case next year, because different areas of the council business would be brought under scrutiny. So I just want to applaud the work that's already been done by the Deputy Town Clerk and the officers, and thank them very much for this extremely comprehensive document, as the Mayor said. And thank you so much for giving so much work to the Policy and Finance Committee. We will be getting down to it as soon as we possibly can. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. So move this to a vote then, please, to adopt the suggested resolutions and timescales relating to recommendations detailed in the internal audit report. All those in favour, please show. And that's unanimous. Thank you very much, everybody. Right. Okay, meeting schedule 2021-2022. So to consider a draft meeting schedule for 2021-2022, it's attached. Deputy Town Clerk, if you want to explain the rationale behind the proposed schedule, please. Very good.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Consulting with the other officers we put together is a schedule which hopefully addresses the needs of things like the recommendations from the audit. Therefore, there were initial conversations of policy potentially only be needed every quarter, but because of the amount of work that will be required for the resolutions, to put it on a 6-weekly rotation, with full council still 6-weekly as well. But things need to fall in line to be able to be seen at the appropriate time. So one of the recommendations in the audit is that the quarter finances should be viewed by the next appropriate full council, not the Policy and Finance Committee, because they are the finances of the council as a whole. So therefore, we've tried to structure it that there is there's enough time for between the quarter end and the next appropriate full council for officers to be able to produce the end of quarter documentation. A good example, I think, of where we looked at tracking meetings is July. So the proposal for the grants meeting on the 7th, those minutes would then be, because grants recommends who to fund, that those minutes are then ratified at full council, that's the 19th, and then any permissions to pay those ratified grants would be viewed at Policy and Finance the following week. So throughout the calendar, we've tried to track that. With Christmas lights, because we know last year, partly because of lockdowns, not knowing where we stood with things, a lot of rushed work happened at the end. We're having more frequent meetings, in particular scheduled meetings in not every month until we get September, because September, October, November, that's when a lot of work needs to be done for Christmas lights, and then restarting again in February to review the previous year and assess what we're going to do for 2022. The one committee, which is the two committees that are reduced compared with what currently happens, personnel. In the past, that was quarterly, then it's gone to monthly. The proposal at the moment for this is that because of ongoing issues, we do maybe need to be more than quarterly, so it's scheduled every other month. And planning, property and services, that's currently on a 3-weekly cycle, but a lot of that is to fulfil the needs of the planning system from East Riding. On this schedule, it's every 4 weeks. It gives a little bit more time for officers to carry out actions. Any planning applications that are very minor, currently officers have the ability to delegate in consultation with the chair. Any that we think we need extensions on, I can request them, the extensions, to make sure we can still view them, plenty of applications in the meetings, and any larger strategic applications to bring to full council, because they're of a bigger nature, and seek extensions where possible for those. I think it pans out. We wanted to make sure that we had all the meetings that we may require, because a meeting isn't legally bound until it's summoned with the agenda. So it might be that a meeting isn't required, but we wanted to make sure they were scheduled there in case we needed them, with enough slack in case we did need to drop any additional extraordinary meetings of either full council or additional committee meetings in to address any matters that might arise. If councillors are happy to approve this or take it away and consider it further, it can be finalised if required when we next meet. But this is our best plan to try and make the council work as efficiently as possible over the next year.
Thank you, Deputy Clerk. I think it's a fantastic document, very well thought out, very well plotted. My only question is, in the policy meeting in November, it's in brackets budget brainstorming. Is that an informal meeting or is that an actual meeting of policy? Because if we're going with what you've said for grants, it's quite a while until the next payment run is authorised. So is that a formal meeting but just including a budget brainstorming session?
Yes, unless councillors feel they would like a separate session just to look at the budget on an informal basis, which what I could do then, Mr. Chair, is we could just have that as policy and finance in November without budget brainstorming, because a budget brainstorming session could be just an informal meeting where councillors can throw ideas around, so it wouldn't necessarily have to be scheduled. But again, if coming up to November you wanted an additional meeting fitting in an official meeting, there's the opportunity to do that.
Yes. Thank you, Deputy Clerk. Councillor Pinder.
Yes, I just want to make the observation that I understand the thinking behind it, but I do have concerns about mayor making being held before the by-election.
But it can't be done any other way though, Councillor Pinder, because we wouldn't be meeting legally. We've got to get the AGM in before the end of the Coronavirus Act.
Well, I've
So
expressed
what's
my
the
opinion.
suggestion?
Yeah, I've expressed my opinion that I think there are circumstances in which we could meet in person. I do think in the end we will actually have the power to meet in Zoom. Anyway, I've made my position clear in email anyway. So
Thank you very much, Councillor Pinder. Councillor Healy.
Yeah, Chair, just wanted to, on the diarising of the personnel meetings, as you know, because we are fully transparent in everything that we do, we want personnel to meet more regularly than the sort of required quarterly that we've been doing, that this council has done in the past. So we have diarised personnel meetings every month, but we recognise that it may not always be necessary to meet. I think that was one of the points that we made, but we will endeavour to do that. But we changed personnel meetings to monthly for that reason, so that we could keep on top of things and be as transparent as we could be. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if councillors want, we can add that. So put the suggested personnel meetings on the last Thursday of the month rather than the next week rotation, so it's standardised, but they could be calendared in and then called if required.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just confused with personnel because on my calendar it's bi-monthly.
Yes, that's what goes for next year. It's been monthly, but if councillors want it to be monthly rather than bi-monthly, we can schedule them in if they are required. And then if they're required, the meeting takes place. If not, it doesn't. It may give more flexibility that way.
Yeah. No, I think this has got flexibility in this proposal, because of course if more meetings are required, then more meetings can of course be called by the chair of committees. So if that's needed, then that can be done. But I think that the calendar as proposed is very sensible. So thank you for that. Do we just advise Deputy Town Clerk, do we adopt this now, or is this done at AGM?
I'll revise it with we just need to take things off like the budget brainstorming, and then that's the final version will be the AGM. Yes,
yeah, I thought it was. Thank you for that. So just to note, councillors, this draft meeting schedule. I mean, of course, if the Emergency Coronavirus Act is extended, then we can think about mayor making at a more appropriate time. Right, item 10, Beverley Food Festivals 2021. So in light of the ongoing pandemic, any inquiries from stallholders, the council is to consider whether or not to run the Beverley Food Festival in October and the Christmas Food and Drink Festival in November. As was discussed last year, councillors, it takes months of planning and preparation for this event to go forward. That is worth considering in discussions and to bear in mind. So thoughts, please. Councillor Willis.
I'd like to think both could go ahead, but I have my reservations as to time to organise and if we had to suddenly cancel. So I'm wondering about whether to go ahead with the November one, not the October. I think the October one might be too soon. And I would hate to think we'd organise stallholds and all that sort of thing and suddenly had to cancel. But that's just my feelings.
Yeah, thank you for that. Deputy Town Clerk, do you want to come in? Give your thoughts.
Yeah, if I could just say to councillors, Mr. Chair, whilst there's lots of stuff in the news at the moment about big music festivals taking place, they are contained events. It's ticketed. People may have to prove they've had the vaccine, may have to have a test beforehand. There's complete control as to who enters the event. With the food festival, it's entirely different. There's so many different routes into the town centre. We don't know who's going to turn up. It's not ticketed. Whilst the market will be, regular Saturday market will start again, I think this coming weekend, run by East Riding. Whilst it's busy, we get thousands of people to the food festival. So the safety of that, how we would manage anything like stall holders offering people tasters, a marquee, etc., it would change the entire nature of it. And my concern as an officer is that things still aren't sure enough, health and safety wise, regarding COVID. Regarding the November one, that takes place at the Minster. It could be feasibly easier to run because you've got a one-way round, etc. But again, that depends on how many people are allowed in buildings, etc. And we might not know till near the time if there is any issues regarding a potential third slight wave as people are now being more active as of today while still not having their injections. My suggestion is that we really put them away till next year when we know we'll be in a much safer position, but it's up to councillors to decide.
Thank you, Deputy Clerk. Councillor Gow.
The Deputy Clerk has just mirrored exactly what I was going to say, actually. Absolutely. I think the Minster one might be a little bit easier to marshal, but I think we need to be mindful of public safety and the potential of a fourth wave. So at the moment, it's a nice idea, but unfortunately, no.
Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, noting all of the concerns that the Deputy Clerk has raised, thinking about the Minster one, we've been informed that most people under, the 18 to 29 group will have been receiving their first dose by the end of July of the vaccine, and then 12 weeks, which would make, if that comes to pass, November more feasible. Really, it was a query, given that we might be able to have more control over who's going into that one, as to how much time would be needed specifically to look at the November organisation. I do feel that we simply can't say that we would do the food festival because of all the variables, but depending on how much, how soon officers need to begin working on it, the Christmas food festival might be more viable. Also, potentially, if we pushed it back slightly, I don't know what officers' thoughts are on that in terms of what kind of timings they need.
Deputy Clerk, just want to come in there.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think the October one is out of the window, unfortunately. I wouldn't want to commit to say what time would be needed at this point in time without having a further chat with, I know Libby has been a key player in the administration and liaising with the stallholders, etc. And one thing to bear in mind is the clerk, who is currently not with us, who has managed these events. And with everything we also have to get in place regarding the audit recommendations, etc. There's also capacity issue regarding staffing. It could be that councillors want to make a decision on one, and then officers can report back regarding the other at the next full council meeting, so as not to cut them both off now. But I would concern regarding our capacity at this point in time.
Councillor Tucker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I completely concur with what the Deputy Clerk and Councillor Gow have said. I think it's just too difficult a time. And I also think as a responsible council, it's very we have to be very cautious about allowing something like this because we don't know what's going on. I just think it's an awful big ask when there is a lot of work to do in the council already, with a shortage of staff, with an audit to get sorted out, etc. One thought just suddenly struck me. At some stage we'll have to make an announcement about that, and I just wondered, would it be possible on that site to try and support our local businesses by saying, okay, these are the people who would normally come, and this is an online ordering system. If you want to get your food orders in, then, you know, here are the sites, and you can do what we do virtually by not, you know, not being there. Just a thought.
Thank you, Councillor Tucker. Councillor Horsley.
Yes, it's important to realise that we are already finding that there are variants of the COVID disease which are to some extent resistant to all the current vaccines, particularly in Brazil. So we shouldn't assume, even by November, that we will be totally free, though I would hope that we will be substantially ahead of where we are now, which is a relatively pleasant position to be in.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Horsley. Councillor Astow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I think we have to take the Deputy Town Clerk's advice here. He is concerned as much as we are as well, and the advice that he's giving is that both events should not go ahead this year for obvious reasons. I accept what he's saying about the food festival. I also accept as well what he's saying about the Christmas food and drink festival, which we hold every year in the Minster. And for those of you who's been in the Minster, he's perfectly right that it can be a one-way system. But again, timescales are of the crucial to this, and also it's up to the Minster whether they want us in there, of course, because it's not just the food and drink festival that we have. There's also the Minster themselves put a display of buying, you know, they put stuff on to sell in the North Transept. So we do have to take Matt's advice on this, and I think in view of the circumstances and what Ian has said as well, that we would be foolish to go against the officer's advice on this occasion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Astow. I've got Councillor Healy, Councillor Wiley, Councillor Johnson. Does anybody have anything new to add to the discussion that hasn't already been said? 'Cause I feel like we're all agreeing to everything here. I think we're all singing from the same hymn sheet, so to speak. No, right, that's fine. If I can just move to, but if I can just kind of propose what's already been discussed. If I can propose that we vote to postpone the October Food Festival and the November Christmas Food and Drink Festival to a later date. The reason I say later date is that it doesn't necessarily have to be held in 2022 in October and November. We could decide to hold it sooner than that in 2022, considering we haven't had one for 2 years. In actual fact, for some of us that have fond memories of the last food festival we was able to hold, a summer food festival doesn't sound too bad. So we may wish to look at that. But I think that everybody is of, if I've summed that up well, I think that is the general feeling there. So can I get a seconder for that, please? Councillor Gow, thank you. And all those in favour, please show. Thank you. Okay, that is unanimous, and it is with regret. I think that's worth saying, that it is with regret. So we move on to the. Is this a point of order, Councillor Hopkins?
It's just a request because it's occurred to me in light of our discussion. We've in the past taken part in the Great Get Together. If we could put that on the agenda for next full council, because I think that one probably will have to be said that we won't take place.
Okay, thank you for that. Yeah, noted by the deputy town clerk. See there, thank you. Right then, so moving on to item 11, remote meetings after the 7th of May. So, as we are aware, the government has declined to extend the section of the Emergency Coronavirus Act that directly and officially allows councils to lawfully hold remote meetings and make resolutions legal. This section of the Act concludes at midnight on the 7th of May 2021, and therefore councillors need to consider how to move forward to enable the work of the town councils to continue whilst still adhering to social distancing regulations. So we have a proposed written motion here. So the motion reads, to address issues raised by the government's refusal to extend the section of the Emergency Coronavirus Act that enabled councils to lawfully meet and make resolutions on a remote basis, as of midnight, 7th of May 2021, Beverley Town Council will A. Delegate powers and duties to the town clerk or, in the absence, deputy town clerk, to ensure the town council can continue to function effectively other than where legislation requires that decisions must be made by the council. B. Continue to hold remote meetings as scheduled with the majority consensus on all matters operating as recommendations to the town clerk, deputy town clerk, who will then make decisions taking into account these recommendations. And this is as advised by Matthew Buckley, the head of Legal and Democratic Services at East Riding of Yorkshire Council. To ensure all agendas and minutes during this time will include introductory wording referencing points A and B to ensure clarity of purpose. D. To continue to live stream all remote meetings to ensure public accountability and transparency. And E. To relieve the town deputy town clerk of these delegated powers upon either the law being revised to enable fully lawful remote meetings or when in-person meetings can take place safely. In addition, all members of Beverley Town Council express regret and concern regarding the government's decision not to extend this section of the Emergency Coronavirus Act, especially at a time when local government is carrying out significant responsibilities relating to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic and local elections are taking place, and that the Deputy Town Clerk will write to Graham Stewart MP conveying this. Okay, so I propose that from the chair. Can I have a seconder to that motion, please? Councillor Healy, thank you. I've got Councillor Hopkins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd actually like to propose an amendment, which is just to strengthen the expression of regret. I'd like us to include that the Town Council considers the government's failure to legislate to be an affront to local democracy, because I think, especially in light of the fact that this is going to come to an end on the 7th, we're having an election, but across the country there are other elections ongoing where councillors will suddenly have been elected and then have no power to make the democratic decisions that they're elected for. So I just would like to make that amendment to strengthen our expression of regret that we consider the government's decision to be an affront to local democracy.
Okay, can I have a seconder for that, please? Councillor Willis, thank you. Deputy Town Clerk.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I was just saying I can strengthen that up in the final paragraph And whether I'm on an older version of the agenda than you are, at the top it says, mine says 7th Mary 2021,
yes.
so obviously that'll be changed to 7th May. I'm not sure what Mary had to do with it, but I think that was a slip of the keyboard.
I saw that when I was reading it, and I didn't want to point it out. So I'm glad you have. Okay, any comments on the amendment, please? Councillor Tucker.
Could I possibly ask Councillor Hopkins just to say it again? I didn't really catch it all, so if you could repeat it, please, that would be useful.
Yes,
Yeah.
Councillor Tucker. So just, it currently reads that we express regret and concern. I would like to add, and that we consider it, and that we consider the government's decision an affront to local democracy.
Okay. Any other comments to be made in the debate on the amendment? No. So I move to a vote. It's proposed by Councillor Hopkins, seconded by Councillor Willis, to add the wording in there. All those in favour, please show. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in favour, and those against 1. Okay, thank you. So that is carried and therefore added to the substantive motion, and therefore becomes a substantive motion. Any comments on the debate on the substantive motion? Councillor Pinder.
Yes, I just want to repeat briefly what I've said in the meeting, and I've said in emails that although I applaud Chloe's wording and I agree with her, it's an affront to democracy, I think it's such an affront to democracy that I can't vote for this. I think we could find a way to meet in person. We could exclude the public understanding orders. I don't think it will come to that anyway. It's no reflection on this council or on our officers at all if I abstain on this motion.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Pinder. Okay, so it is worth noting, I should say, for members of the public that may be watching via YouTube, that this decision, this proposal, has been drafted by the Deputy Town Clerk after we have all met informally to discuss this, and after there have been several meetings of a working group to come up with alternative options. As no alternative options are available, this proposal is as a very, very last resort to enable the efficient working of the Town Council. Deputy Town Clerk.
In the similar light, Mr. Chair, for any members of the public who are watching, the government's decision to not extend this aspect of the Act is being challenged in the courts. I believe the 28th of April, there'll be a decision. If at that point the courts overturn it, we can continue as we have been. The government has put all councils in a very, very difficult position with this, and councils want to carry out their elected democratic duties, and hopefully this will get overturned. We won't need to rely on this, which is why I think the most important section of this proposal is possibly E, which means that we wouldn't have to continue with the rest of the motion if required. To clarify for the public, section A, other than legislation required the decisions that must be made by council, that is one reason for bringing the mayor making forwards, because no office delegation can approve election of committees, election of mayor, election of chair. So bringing that forward before the 7th, if it isn't overturned in the High Court, allows us to still remotely on the 4th make those decisions. And anything such as the signing of the AGAR, again, cannot be devolved to officers. So we would have to meet in some capacity to do that. It's limiting that as much as possible whilst people are still concerned for their health. Some people may not, as I haven't had my first injection yet. And we're just trying to make the best we can do of a very difficult job. I appreciate the concerns all councillors have, as is concerns I have too. But we're trying our best in a difficult situation altogether.
And it is worth noting as well that we are effectively carrying on as we are. It's just the wording of what the council is, or what councillors are doing is changing. You know, rather than instructing officers to carry out business on behalf of the council, we are advising officers to carry out business on behalf of the council. You know, that's essentially what's changing here, and the officers just are making it on, you know, doing the decisions based on what we discuss in informal full council meetings. So, right, Councillor Willis.
I sympathise with what Councillor Pinder's saying, and it just shows to me that the government is just doesn't know what goes on in the country. That a lot of councils are in the same position as us, with very small meeting rooms. Sorry, but I won't get on my soapbox.
No, thank you for contribution. You know, it is correct, Councillor Willis. I think we're all very frustrated at the decision, and it's across the sector, the frustration. So, right then, so move this to a vote then, please, councillors. So those in favour of the motion, I'm not going to be reading it all again. So as written and amended by Councillor Hopkins, all those in favour, please show. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 in favour, and those against, of which there are none. Okay, so that is carried. So that is what's happening. Thank you very much, ladies. Sorry, councillors. That closes, that is the end of business. I was going to say ladies and gentlemen, not just ladies. Ladies and gentlemen, councillors, whoever is present, thank you for your attendance this evening. It is very much appreciated. We will now stop the live stream and close the meeting.
Can I suggest